Voiceover, low, grave, barely above a whisper. At 2:13 a.m., all sound in Blackwood Plantation stopped. No dogs barked. No wind stirred the treetops. Only silence. And then, the camera lingers on blackened shutters, a drenched courtyard, footprints streaked in mud disappearing into darkness. You sense something rotten behind the walls. They say that decades ago, a prominent Mississippi planter vanished from his own bed, as if swallowed by shadow. No body, no sign. The only clue, the faint echo of anguished cries. This is the story forgotten by official histories. The plantation owner who bred slaves with his own wife and sons, weaving incest and terror into a legacy no one was meant to speak. In 1843, in a remote corner of Mississippi, an institution of horror was born. This is The Descent. Title appears, The Blood Seed, the dark legacy of Blackwood Plantation. Mississippi, 1843. The cotton belt is pushing deep into the red clay. Vast fields shimmering under the sun, rows of slaves' cabins nestled in low country swamps. Among them stands Blackwood Plantation, white columns, Greek Revival facade, a private chapel wing in the back, and an orphanage annex to which the houseborn children are sent. Reverend Nathaniel Blackwood is the owner, a devout Presbyterian elder outwardly pious, his wife Lydia reserved, gentle in public, but behind closed doors, something else. He preaches against impurity, condemns vice, yet within his own walls he cultivates it. The church in the nearby town reveres him. The state legislature quietly admires his wealth. No one suspects the darkness metastasizing beneath the veneer. Slave quarters murmur about the master's children, born in deep night, spirited away to the orphanage or to the chapel attic. The white facade, the formal sermons, the Sunday processions, all a mask. The soil, blood-tinged earth, the scent of fertile rot, knows what the living refuse to confess. Lydia presents as barren among polite society, yet within Blackwood's walls, there is a hidden nursery. At night, women from the quarters, the houseborn women, are taken upstairs to conceive. Their children are born in secret, pale, fragile, unregistered. The plantation's orphanage annex officially houses neglected children, but is, in fact, the holding ground for those offspring. The children are given new names, tabulated in private ledgers. They sleep in narrow cots in a frozen dormitory under the chapel floor. Hunger, fear, and confusion follow them daily. Some whisper of hearing voices in the walls, something trapped, something crying. The staff, clerks, women attendants, are sworn to secrecy through threats and divine duty. They repeat that this is God's judgment, forging a holy seed. Yet even among them, guilt festers in furtive glances, in trembled hands, in midnight tears. The orphanage corridor lights flicker as if not all lies remain hidden. In spring of 1843, the first child vanishes. A 7-year-old girl, named Esther by the attendants, though her birth name is unknown, walks away from the dormitory one night. The steps echo in the hall, a door creaks, then silence. They find only muddy footprints trailing into the swamp. Reverend Blackwood orders a search. Townsfolk comb the marshes. The family of slaves that mothered her is questioned and terrified. Lydia collapses and faint. In public, Blackwood grieves. In private, he clenches his fists and whispers, "She knew too much." The church offers prayers. The newspaper prints a notice, "Child missing. Reward for return." But no one mentions the orphanage. No one connects the dots between the master's own brood and the vanished child. And in the marsh near the bayou, the swamp reeds whisper, "She is not gone." Something watches. In spring of 1843, the first child vanishes. A 7-year-old girl, named Esther by the attendants, though her birth name is unknown, walks away from the dormitory one night. The steps echo in the hall. A door creaks, then silence. They find only muddy footprints trailing into the swamp. Reverend Blackwood orders a search. Townsfolk comb the marshes. The family of slaves that mothered her is questioned and terrified. Lydia collapses and faint. In public, Blackwood grieves. In private, he clenches his fists and whispers, "She knew too much." The church offers prayers. The newspaper prints a notice, "Child missing. Reward for return." But no one mentions the orphanage. No one connects the dots between the master's own brood and the vanished child. And in the marsh near the bayou, the swamp reeds whisper, "She is not gone." Something watches. Blackwood fathered several children clandestinely. Sons, pale-skinned yet marked with a sorrow in their eyes. They grow in isolation, educated privately, veiled in secrecy. In public, they are hidden in town, tutored under pseudonyms. One named Josiah becomes a minister's assistant in Natchez. Another, Silas, works as a clerk miles away. But both bear the heavy inheritance: nightmares, compulsions, dread of confirmation. They have dreams of shackles, of watery graves, of mothers crying. Reverend Blackwood leads them in religious ritual: midnight communion in the private chapel, communion of wine and tears. He tells them they are the holy lineage, bound to save the plantation, that impurity must be purged. Their bodies, minds, souls warped. Silas becomes withdrawn, hearing voices in corners. Josiah trembles during sermons. The sons suspect the truth is deeper than they can bear. They inch toward unspoken knowledge of the orphanage, of vanished sisters, of rooms no one must enter. The Methodist and Presbyterian synods in Mississippi hold sway. Blackwood is a trustee. He donates land, builds chapels, supports missionary efforts. But no one in church governance ever asks questions. When Mercer's letter surfaces in a fringe abolitionist pamphlet, the synod committees quietly discourage its distribution. They label it slander and fanaticism. The press is pressured not to reprint. The regional bishop visits, inspects paperwork, and finds no cause. When an investigative minister journeys to Blackwood and requests to see the orphanage, he is turned away. It is private family property, Blackwood says in pious sorrow. The bishop accepts. The minister returns home with a dull unease and later dies of a mysterious fever. Thus the institutional church protects its own. The public face sanctifies the lie. The inner chambers hold the rot. The true sacrament is silence. 10 miles from Blackwood lies the town of Willow's Edge. The locals praise the Blackwood family, the lordly benefactors, our moral guiders. The Blackwood Chapel in town, the library donated by Lydia, the blacksmith's work funded. Still, folk whisper, late at night, at the plantation gates, cries float across the fields. Some hear children sobbing. Some see lights at odd hours in the abandoned orphanage window. Some claim a woman in white walks the drive, mourning. But those who mention it too loudly vanish, threatened, warned, quietly displaced. The plantation is the largest employer. To cross Blackwood is to lose your job, your home, your reputation. So the town colludes. The silence is a contract. In the local cemetery, several unmarked graves lie just beyond the fence. The tombstones stop, a row of broken markers. No records exist. No one accounts for them. But at midnight, certain graves stir as if breathing. Lydia Blackwood ages like a statue. Stricken with fits, she mutters names in her sleep. Esther, Mercy, Mary. She drifts through the halls in white nightgowns, miasma in her eyes. One night she slips outside and wanders to the orphanage annex. She stands before the shuttered windows, pressing her thin palms to the wood, sobbing with such force her robes billow in wind that has not yet come. She whispers, my children, let me see you again." She paces, scratching at boards, as if yearning to tear them apart. Staffers find her collapsed, locked in a spasm of grief, her hair wet with tears, her fingernails digging into her palms. In the chapel she trembles during communion. She accuses Nathaniel in private. They cry at night. "You deck them in purity and warp their blood. You have made me barren in public, but full of death in hidden chambers." He silences her with an oath. "You called forth this seed. You must bear the weight." In 1885, a historian and folklorist named Maria Davenport hears rumors while researching plantation journals. She reads old maps, diaries, and solicits oral tales from freed slaves. She uncovers references to the night nursery, the white daughter, the unmarked graves. She borrows a map of the old Blackwood plantation, now partially sold. She walks the land, trailing ghost-like outlines of the foundation of the orphanage, creeping vines, an unused chapel ruin. She senses a tremor in the earth. In diaries of freed women she reads, "A white child visited me in dreams, begging for milk. A baby in the grass, lips cracked, staring at me." Davenport becomes obsessed. She writes letters seeking funding to excavate foundations. But her funders in the South warn her. She is told the surviving Blackwood heirs pay for silence. Her letters are intercepted. Her publisher is threatened. Her notes vanish. She disappears. She is never heard from again. The only trace, a partially burnt journal, where the final page reads, "I have reopened their wounds. May God forgive me." In 1922, a new owner of the old plantation, one Colonel Hurst, begins renovations. In clearing to build a guest house, workers crack floorboards beneath the chapel ruin. They find a hidden staircase descending into damp darkness. They explore by lantern. A tunnel, slick stone walls, narrow corridor. At its end, a small room lined with chains, rusted infant cradles, bones bleached white, shards of pottery, even faint footprints in dried earth. They find on a stone slab scorched words, "Seed of purity, we bear the blood." Names scratched faintly. Esther, Mercy, Mary. The air is fetid. Something breathes in the darkness. One worker flees screaming. Others find themselves drawn to the cells, hearts pounding. Colonel Hurst orders a sealing of the entrance and forces silence. He offers hush money to the townspeople and to local newspapers. The episode is hushed. No newspapers ever report bones found. The plantation remains private. The chapel ruins grow moss. The secret returns to darkness. In the years after, guests staying in the plantation's guest wing report horrors. At midnight, they hear soft infant wailing, footsteps down halls, doors slowly creaking open. Some speak of children pressing their faces at windows. One guest wakes to feel a small, cold hand on her neck, sees a pale child figure dissolve into the darkness. Another finds muddy footprints across the parlor floor in the morning. Staff hear whispers behind walls. The nightmares spill into daily life. Guests dream of burial, of fetid wombs, of mothers screaming in silence. They awaken with marks on their skin, red as slashes. The staff treat them quietly. They urge guests not to leave. A local caretaker, old and gaunt, warns. They will come back to claim what was theirs. The bones stir. The blood remembers. He closes his shutters early, lest he see those phantoms drifting across the fields, heading toward the manor. In 1938, a journalist named Clara Winslow, investigating Southern hauntings, hears a whispered legend of Blackwood Plantation in county archives. She secures access under the guise of architectural history. She arrives at the plantation as dusk falls. She senses a hitch in the air, a weight, a stench, the subtle hum of suppressed voices. She interviews the caretaker, hears fragments of stories. She sneaks down into the sealed tunnel with a flashlight. She photographs bones, rusted cribs, the carved inscription. Her camera captures a faint outline. In long exposure, a pale child's face in a corridor, mouth open in silent cry. She feels cold fingertips brush her hair. She returns up trembling. Blackwood's descendants, still alive, confront her. "You are trespassing on sacred ground. You will not publish this." She refuses. That same night, her camera and negatives vanish. She flees the plantation under storm, her mind cracked by what she saw. By 1945, the last of the Blackwood heirs dwells in an empty mansion, haunted by guilt and inheritance. The sons either died in madness or fled. The church disavowed them quietly. A young descendant, Eleanor Blackwood, inherits the land. She is fragile, uncertain of her lineage. She hears rumors, reads old letters in the attic, stumbles upon Mercer's letter, Davenport's burned journal, Clara's cryptic notes. She descends through the trapdoor, through the corridor, into the bone chamber. She stands before the slab with scratched names. She whispers, "Mother, sister, brother, I see you." At that moment, shadows flicker. The ghostly forms of pale children converge, spectral and ragged. They press hands to her dress, whispering names. She smells rot, hears the drip of water, feels their breath on her skin. Eleanor screams. The spirits swirl. She staggers out, unsure what is alive, what is dead, what is memory. She realizes the guilt, the corruption, the ancient trauma. These cannot be forgotten. The Mississippi Historical Society, the state church, the local press, all allied Blackwood from narrative. The archives list Blackwood as a prosperous planter who died in 1865, wife Lydia deceased 1860, No mention of scandal. Eleanor petitions for acknowledgement, for excavation, for justice. She is told, the records were lost in the war. She is dismissed. The church denies association. The society claims no evidence. Officials refuse her access to land deeds, to restricted archives. She senses that centuries of conspiracy guard that plantation's history. The institutional machinery shuts out her voice. She posts open letters, tries to attract outside attention. But powerful Southern families, descendants, church elders push back. They threaten litigation, social ruin. The secret remains sealed in law, in memory, in silence. Eleanor begins nightly dreams. She is naked in a blood-stained nursery, cribs creaking, children crying, her body pregnant, her mind torn. She walks through halls where time twists, colonial, 19th century, 20th century overlapping. She tastes iron in her mouth, smells damp linen, hears children chanting in low voices. She feels fear invade her bones. She awakens in sweat, with bruises. She senses something merging with her, a child's sorrow, a burden. She confesses to a psychiatrist in New Orleans. She's haunted, possessed by ancestral voices. The doctor sees her eyes dilate in horror. He calls it psychosis. But she refuses that framing. This is inheritance. She writes in her journal, they will not rest until they are known. I carry them. The secret is rooted in my flesh as in the soil. One lunar night, Eleanor gathers local descendants, freed families, church elders. She leads them into the plantation grounds, into the sealed tunnel, with flashlights, shovels, cameras. They pry open boards, breathe stale air, descend. The bones, cribs, names are still there, dim in torchlight. The descendants weep. Freed family descendants murmur prayers. The church elders gasp. Suddenly, a breeze sweeps the chamber. Shapes flicker. A child's cry echoes. A small figure darting among bones. A pale, wispy hand reaches toward Eleanor's face. She recoils, but the children move toward her, pressing into her. She kneels in the chamber, hands outstretched, tears falling, voices trembling. We are yours. We were hidden. We hunger for recognition. The bones stir. The walls pulse. The slab inscription glows faintly. In that moment, the secret is unearthed. Not merely skeletons, but stories, souls, submerged lives forced into darkness now demanded into light. News spreads quietly. Bones found. Plantation scandal revived. But the major newspapers remain silent. The church holds a private meeting. The Mississippi Historical Society issues a bland statement. Unverified remains discovered, under study. Eleanor petitions for proper burial and memorial, for naming of the children, for repentance. Some townsfolk respond with fear, denial, some with sorrow. The state legislature debates slight recognition. The church issues a symbolic apology, but refuses to admit complicity, refuses to remove Blackwood's name from chapels. The descendants resist removing memorials, some out of pride, some out of guilt. Eleanor supervises reburial in consecrated ground. She names the children on markers: Esther, Mercy, Mary, and others. She fetches the names from letters, from scratched bones, from fragments. The plantation becomes historic land, with a caution sign. Warning, sensitive site. Tourists avoid it. The guest wing closes. But at midnight, lights still flicker, the bones beneath whisper. In modern years, a child dreams of the orphanage, of faces pressed to bars, of mothers crying. Scholars reference a Blackwood legend. But no mainstream history books mention the incest or breeding program. The church quietly omits that chapel's origin in future guides. The local high school teaches cotton economy, but not the plantation's secret. The town avoids the subject. Yet, privately, people still speak. Elders tell children to never go near the ruins. Some claim to see ghostly children at dusk among the trees. Some swear they hear baby sobs in summer storms. The trauma ripples down bloodlines. Some descendants carry nightmares. Some have unexplained illnesses, compulsions, voids in memory. The land itself is wounded, the soil haunted. This is the dark underside of American history. Institutions shielding corrupt power, the silence of churches, the weight of hidden lineage, the unspoken inheritance of trauma. Voiceover, slow, weighty. We descend into secrecy. We draw the curtain to behold horror. But once seen, The horror cannot be unseen. Once named, the dead cannot be unnamed. Blackwood Plantation was real only in this telling, but it stands for many real horrors. The lies hidden by power, the corruption sanctified by institutions, the trauma buried in soil and blood, demanding recognition. To remember is to resist erasure. The orphans, the children, the nameless, the unheard, they press against our walls. They ask, will we listen? Will we confess? Will we rebuild from truth, or continue to bury, to deny? At midnight, when silence suffocates, the voices rise. And somewhere beneath our comfort, the bones stir. Fade to black. Credits roll with names of the hidden children etched in pale white.